Hello, everyone, and welcome to Science Buffs, the ultimate podcast for STEM enthusiasts. Today, as you can tell from the glorious title, I'm sure we are getting into a good STEM topic, but let's talk about life updates first because we like to chat a little bit before getting into the technical stuff. So, Sam, how was your weekend? What did you do? Any updates?
Well, last weekend I did nothing, but I watched the first four Star Wars movies because we had like
That's
a snow
awesome.
day on Saturday and I had never seen the first four. So we
You
watched
haven't?
one through four. No, I think I've seen episode one, like, and
Oh,
then I know generally I think I've seen scenes by being in like the room when people are watching it, but other than that, I hadn't seen anything. So,
how did you like them?
like, so good. I feel like when you're little and you watch them, you don't understand the politics. And
Oh,
so
I
it's like,
still don't.
oh, yeah. So when I watched one through three and then jumped into four, I feel like I way understood everything way better.
Right.
Um,
What was your favorite
so
one of the four? Because I have a favorite by far. I'm wondering if
prob
we.
probably the third one,
Oh,
but I can't remember which
yes.
one that's called.
I have no idea what it's called, but it's the one where Anakin like turns bad. It's very dramatic.
It's
And
so crazy.
I feel like the old school people, like old school Star Wars, were like, ugh, they ruined it, and like that's by far my favorite
I
episode.
think it's so good. And I was like, I didn't realize how he came back as Darth Vader.
Oh, yeah,
Anakin did. Well, I mean, I realized that he was Anakin and he became Darth Vader.
I see.
But when he got his arms and his legs cut off, I was like, how
Oh
does this
yeah,
happen?
I know that was I was shook like
I was
when
literally
that came
like,
out and you saw him and he's just like literally with no arms and no legs and he's just like laying there burning. I was like, wow,
yeah,
this is drama. I think that's what maybe got me hooked on like dramatic shows as a small child because it's like this
yeah.
is crazy.
It was really crazy. I will say that Padme and Anakin's love story
Oh,
just kind of gives me the ick
oh yeah, it's a little
because
grody.
my favorite thing is when he like tries to make a move on her and she's like, "You're making me uncomfortable," and then they end up kissing. I was like,
I
this
love
is
we always make
questionable.
fun of that scene where she's like, hold me like you did by the lake on Taboo. I'm like, barf.
Barf.
He's like,
Gross.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and gets everywhere.
I've died a
Anyway,
little bit since
classic.
every day that I've met you. I'm
Oh,
like, is that a
is that a
compliment?
quote? That's
Yeah.
gross.
When they get captured, like before they get thrown into that ring to fight those
Oh,
beasts, she goes,
okay.
I've just been dying a little bit every day since I met you. And I was like, is that supposed to be a
Like, I
compliment? I
don't
don't
think that's
understand.
you're in a toxic relationship. Just kidding.
Taylor Swift.
Oh, okay. That brings up the Super Bowl. We're recording late, so this is a quick turnaround, but we watched the Super Bowl this weekend. And yeah, Sam had some thoughts. I had some thoughts. I think my thoughts have mellowed a little bit
Me too.
since then. But
I
just
think,
recap what you
yeah.
saw, what you felt.
While we were texting, I have concerns about Travis's behavior towards his coach. And I think I have even more concerns that he lied about it when he got asked about it.
Didn't you
He's
say like
like,
I
"Oh,
was
I was
telling
just
him I
telling
love
him
you
how
so
much I
much?
loved him." Yeah. And
You
then
know,
the
I
coach was like,
think
the
he
coach
might
was
have
like,
like
"Yeah, that's not."
stretched it like I think he probably was like, put me in the game. This is how I imagine it. Put me in the game. I want to fumble. Ah. And then he realized
Yeah.
he kind of like overdid it. So then as he was like turning away, he was just like, I love you, but come on. That's what I think. And then he
Yeah,
was
it
like, I
looks
said I
really
love
dramatic.
you. So, and technically it's not a lie.
The coach just looks like such an like adorable man, especially when I saw like posts of him later on. I don't know anything about him, but I was
Yeah,
like, if you push an
he's
elderly man,
well, the thing is like they're buddy buddy and like they're friends. And then the coach came out and said like, "Oh, usually I like yell back in his face and like give it to him back, but I was caught off guard." And the podcast, The Toast, you all must listen if you haven't already. They were talking about it and they're like, the worst part is that he got spooked. Like, even if my husband walked into my bathroom and I'm caught off guard, like that's not acceptable. But like to do that to an old man. So
that's
I don't
such
know.
the
I have
truth.
like kind of interesting feelings about it because I'm like, yeah, not cool. But then there's like a bunch of these other pictures. Like someone put a compilation of all these other players like yelling at their coach. And I'm like, is this just a thing in football that you do?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that it's okay, but
No, but like, is that an acceptable thing? Like, it's not like, oh, it's disrespectful. It's like, oh, the coach is yelled at and then the coach yells back. Like, is that
yeah.
how it
Instead
is?
of just like
The big problem was that he didn't see him either. And then he almost like
yeah, he
fell to
was
the
like,
ground. Like, he was also like, he bumped him, but then he was also like holding him up because he's like, oh gosh, like he's falling.
yeah, that was kind of crazy.
So I don't know. But then I got like a major ick when he started singing Viva Las Vegas, but it's like a podcast thing, I guess, where he's like doing it for Jason Kelsey. So, but it was like kind of gross. And I was like,
Did you see
oh,
Taylor Swift's face?
and
She's
she's like,
like,
mm.
I don't know.
And at that point, I was like, surely she must be able to get someone smarter. But then all the videos came out of them partying together after. Because I was kind of like, how are the logistics happening up here? She's like too famous to just go out in Vegas and just party. But of course, if I had thought about it, like they rented out a huge club and it's like high security and I think private or something.
Well,
So
if
she
you
went out
look
and
like
partied with
around
them.
them, if you look around them, no one's dancing. They have to be security guards.
Yeah, well, and she brought her parents to the club. And she was at that video was she was at in the DJ booth. Like, so people
Yes.
were like sitting on the wall. Anyway, so I was like, it made it better that she went out and partied with them, kind of from the Viva Las Vegas vibe and Fight for Your Right to Party vibe. I was like, he's just gonna go get drunk and she's gonna be like, what, in a hotel somewhere, just sitting, like, yay.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I'm back to kind of liking them, I guess. But
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, they're not my favorite, but
everyone's
if
throwing
she's
red
happy, that's
flags.
okay.
I hope he
I have
shaves
a
his beard
theory.
or trims it.
I have a theory that she, whether consciously or subconsciously, dates toxic men because she knows that it like helps her artistically. Not that necessarily that she's gonna write songs about them, but I think she's like, I feel a lot of things for this person,
Interesting.
good
Yeah, I
and
wonder.
bad,
I was like so convinced that
liking
they're
the
gonna get
drama.
married. And I still think I am. But
I
like
don't
I
know.
think people just now, you know, the trend of like people being overexposed and then it's like cool to just hate people. And I feel like we're getting dangerously close to that edge where people are just,
Yeah, I love Taylor Swift though. Like, I'm a big
yeah.
fan, but
Yeah,
I
but everyone's
mean,
like, "Oh my God, he's gonna hit her." I'm like, I think he's just a football player, but also probably not the best move. I don't know. Conflicted thoughts. Okay, last life update. Valentine's Day is tomorrow. Any fun
yes,
plans?
yes, I have a Valentine
Let's
and
go.
I'm very excited. We're not doing anything tomorrow, but he says he has a surprise for me on Friday. So I'm excited. He said he's very
Oh,
bad at surprises, but he has kept this surprise for like 4 weeks.
whoa.
So, and
We'll
he
have
even gave me
to.
clues today, and I have literally no idea.
Oh, wow. Okay. We'll have to catch up on the next recording.
Yeah,
See
we
what your
will.
Valentine's Day surprise was. I'm excited to hear.
Yeah, you're gonna have to think about, maybe you can think about it, but he said it happens like once a year. It's in town, it's like a seasonal thing. It's not
Oh,
a concert,
I'll have to
it's not
think
a
about it.
show.
Seasonal thing. Hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know. Maybe he's taking you to well, in town. Never mind. Like maybe he's taking you to the parade, the Super
The
Bowl
parade.
parade.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, unless he could have predicted the Super Bowl win.
He planned this 4 months ago that the Chiefs would win.
Oh my God.
Anyway, good, good, good.
What about you? What are you guys doing?
Oh, yeah, we're making just a little meal at home because we have been trying to not eat out like the whole month. We've been like, let's budget. And
That's
then
awesome.
we've eaten, yeah, but except now that we have a rule in place, we're like, I only want to eat out. So we've been out plenty this month. So we're just gonna make bruschetta and chicken Caesar salad at
Ooh,
home. That's kind of like our tradition Valentine's Day meal.
that sounds fun.
So we're doing that. So I'm
Are you
excited.
doing it tomorrow? Or I
Yeah.
mean for Valentine's Day? Okay, on
Yep. We're
Valentine's
doing
Day.
it
Got it.
tomorrow. We kind of celebrated out yesterday at this place called Saltgrass, which is really good.
Oh, you wait, I went there with you. No, did I?
Yes, yes, that's the place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I liked that.
Okay. Well, it's been like 20 minutes of updates. So
You're like, let's move on.
let's get into the clues. Okay. I'm kind of winging the clues. But here we go. Clue number 1 is it can be fun or it can be not good at all. There's many pluses to this thing and many downsides.
I have a really bad thought, but
Oh,
I'm not gonna
no.
say. Okay, I don't know. I'm gonna need another
Okay, we'll
clue.
pass. Okay. Second clue. For a little part of US history, it was illegal.
Drinking,
Yes. And that
alcohol.
good thing you guessed it because I didn't really have a good third clue teed up. But yes, we're going to be talking about alcohol. So it's going to be like how it's made, but also then what it does to your body chemically, like all the different chemical reactions happening in your body, a little bit of the history about it. So, we got some good stuff on deck.
Interesting. This
So,
is a good twist.
yes.
We've
So,
been going down the medical path lately. I
I
like
know,
it.
I feel like it's so outside of our comfort zone kind of that I'm like I think this is, you know, I'm
I like
fascinated
it.
by it. So, okay, so let's just talk about what alcohol like is first and like kind of how it's made because I've never really known how hard liquor is made or distilled. Um, but the main ingredient in alcohol, it's ethanol and water. Those are the major components of any alcoholic beverages. Some also have a lot of sugar or, other flavors and things, but it's mostly ethanol and water. Alcoholic beverages, there's distinct groups, as you probably know. So there's beer, wine, or distilled beverages. Beer is made from either rice, hops, corn, or malt. So there's different types of beer. Wine is made from the fermentation of fruits like grapes, apples, berries, cherries, or plums. And then distilled beverages are made from a variety of plant materials like grains, fruits, seeds, stems, or leaves. So it can kind of be a broader mix of what you can put in to make the distilled beverages.
So this is crazy because when I was in Japan, I thought that it would be people are probably tired of me talking about Japan, but I thought sake was
Never.
distilled, but it's brewed like beer because it's a grain.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
I
and
didn't
that
know
kind of
that.
makes sense because yeah, they say beer can be made from rice. Although I thought
It's
it
made of
was
rice.
yeah, I thought that that was a wine.
Sake is made of rice and
Interesting.
it's brewed like beer.
So it is technically kind of a beer. Oh, that's a fun fact.
Yeah.
Cool. So alcohol is an organic compound with a hydroxyl functional group attached to a carbon atom. So I'll post a picture of like the molecule, like the chemistry graph, because that's kind of interesting. Um, Ethyl alcohol or ethanol is the most well-known alcohol because it is the intoxicating agent found in alcoholic beverages. So when you drink alcohol, that's what you're feeling. It's produced naturally by yeast and some other microorganisms when they ferment sugars. Another commonly used alcohol is isopropyl alcohol, but that's like the disinfectant one. So those are actually two different
That's what I was gonna
compounds.
say. I thought
Yeah,
that was for
yeah.
medical
So
purposes.
the drinking alcohol obviously is different than the rubbing alcohol. So okay, so let's talk about like how some alcohol is made. I highlighted whiskey and beer because I feel like wine is kind of more self-explanatory, whereas like fermenting fruit. Um, but the four primary steps to make whiskey are mashing, fermenting, distilling, and then aging. So each distiller uses different grain combinations, like depending on what flavors they want in it and whatever, you can use a bunch of different grains. Um, so for example, Tennessee whiskey, they want a certain flavor. So Tennessee whiskey specifically has to be 51% corn. They also use barley, rye, and wheat, but they have like very strict limits on what.
51%, huh?
Yes.
That's
So
interesting.
I don't exactly know why, but something about the flavors. So those grains are ground into this fine meal. It's mixed with water and it's cooked until the starches and grain have been converted into sugars. So that process creates this big mash. It's then mixed with yeast, and then the yeast works to convert the sugar to alcohol. Um, okay, whiskey, it says like all spirits. This is interesting. So whiskey is originally colorless when it comes off the still. So, oh wait, so then that mash is then heated up in a still. And then evaporation and condensation allows the alcohol to separate from the water and the grain. So that's how they like actually separate it out from that mash. But then, yeah, so then it comes off the still and it's clear. It says the distilled spirit must be aged in an oak container to become whiskey. This is the Tennessee whiskey site that I found this on. So it says Tennessee whiskey goes a step farther and requires that the spirits must be first filtered through sugar maple charcoal and then aged in charred white oak barrels. So after that aging process, that is what gives it its color. So that was
That's
kind
interesting.
of fascinating. So that's how a whiskey is made. Beer is kind of the same sort of thing where grains are put through like a grinder basically. They turn into a mash, they're heated. That's known as wort. It's brought to a boil, kind of the same thing. It like yeast works to break down the sugars. And then after fermentation, some beers are filtered or run through a centrifuge, and then it's packed up and ready to drink. So
How long does the process take start to finish? Does it say?
I'd have to look it up, but like the boiling is around 90 minutes, and then I think it sits there like fermenting for quite a while. I think if I remember, it's like a couple weeks, but I'll have to look and put it in the stories because I'm not exactly sure.
Should we try to make some moonshine?
I do kind of want to get one of those kits where you can like make your own something,
I think there's
either
a
beer or
store in
whiskey.
downtown Denver. I've heard when I was in college, I heard there was this store in downtown Denver where you can buy the kits to make like home brewed
Okay.
beer
Yeah,
or
that would
whiskey.
be
I'll look
cool.
it
We
up.
should try it as a science experiment.
Yeah, I feel like if I tried to make it, it would taste terrible. But
Yeah, I'm sure we might not have the taste for it. I don't like any real whiskey that much. I tried
a
at one
whiskey
point.
gal. Recently, I've been like the past couple of years, I've really enjoyed old fashions.
Yeah, I'll do an old fashioned if it's like the perfect mix, but like I don't know, it's a lot. It's a lot to
Not your
handle.
thing.
Okay, so some of the chemical breakdown of alcohol. Let's get into that and like how to metabolize alcohol. So alcohol is metabolized by several processes and pathways. The most common involves two different enzymes. So the first one is called ADH. The second one is called ALDH. I don't know if I'm going to try to pronounce it. Well, I guess I'll try. Alcohol dehydrogenase and aldehyde dehydrogenase. Those are the two enzymes that break down alcohol. So these break apart the molecule and make it possible to eliminate it from the body. First, ADH metabolizes alcohol into something called acetaldehyde or acetaldehyde. But this is kind of interesting because this one, that the first step of metabolizing, I just like stuttered because I could not figure out how to pronounce the word. But that is a highly toxic substance, it says, and it's a known carcinogen. So when they say like alcohol is, not good for you, a lot of it I think is because of this step where the first it's brief, but it is a known toxic substance. So then, pretty quickly, that substance is further metabolized down to another less active byproduct called acetate. That's then broken down into water and carbon dioxide, and then it leaves your body. So there are some other enzymes, cytochrome and catalase also break down alcohol into that toxic substance, which I'm not going to try to pronounce again. So the cytochrome, the enzyme cytochrome P452E1. I don't even think they have like a good name for this, but that is the chromosome. That is only active after a person has consumed a very large amount of alcohol, and it only metabolizes like a very small amount of the alcohol in the body. So that one's not super. Also, some alcohol interacts with fatty acids and they form other compounds. So there's like some different mechanisms, but the main one is that those two that I mentioned, the ADH and the ALDH.
So is alcohol, this might be a dumb question, but we don't do dumb questions here.
Yeah.
Is alcohol from like beer, wine, liquor all broken down the same way with your body?
Yes. From what I can tell, it's all the same compound that is going into it. So it's all the same metabolization, whatever. It all goes through the
Metabolistic. No, I'm just
mechanism.
kidding.
So yes, it says in addition to the toxic compounds effects, it says some researchers believe that it may be responsible for some of the behavioral and physiological effects previously attributed to alcohol. So when this was administered to lab animals, it leads to like them not being coordinated, memory impairment, sleepiness. So they don't actually think it's like the alcohol compound that is responsible for all those, like you being uncoordinated and like falling over when people are like blackout drunk. They think it's actually, as it's starting to be metabolized, this toxic byproduct is what's causing all those side effects.
Interesting.
That's apparently still up for, some debate, but it could be something. So when you drink alcohol, it's absorbed through the lining of your stomach and it makes its way into your bloodstream. So once it's there, it spreads to all the tissues of your body. It reaches your brain within 5 minutes and it starts to affect you within 10, which
Wow.
is quick, but I guess it makes sense. Like I guess that lines up with what I've experienced, I guess.
That lines up with my personal experience.
It says after 20 minutes, your liver starts processing the alcohol. And on average, the liver can metabolize 1 ounce of alcohol every hour. So this is kind of like the classic guideline of like, 1 drink an hour. Like over 1 drink an hour, you're going to feel some things. A blood alcohol level of 0.08 is the legal limit for drinking. And it takes around 5.5 hours to leave your system once you're at that blood alcohol level, which is a lot longer than I thought.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Alcohol will also stay in your urine for up to 80 hours and in your hair follicles for up to 3 months. Which I did not know at all.
3 months. That's crazy.
Yeah. So intoxication occurs then when alcohol intake exceeds your body's ability to metabolize the alcohol and break it down. And your whole body absorbs the alcohol, but really like your brain is kind of what takes the brunt of it. And that's where, they kind of outline these steps of like different levels of intoxication, basically, because at first it's just like a dopamine hit. You feel really, really good and it's all the happy feelings. But then as you kind of progress, there's different stages of drinking. So when your blood alcohol content is between 0.01 and 0.05, this is the first stage. It's called subliminal intoxication. You probably don't look like you've been drinking, but everything might just be a little bit off, like your reaction time, your behavior. You might be like a little bit more lively, slightly altered, but like nothing too bad. Usually this is after like 1 drink. Euphoria is the next phase. During this, your brain releases more dopamine. That's the chemical linked to pleasure. So during euphoria, you feel relaxed, confident. Your reasoning and memory might be slightly impaired. So they say that this is when your blood alcohol is between 0.03 and 0.12. So like
That's
technically
crazy.
you could feel that and be driving home.
Wow.
Seems not correct.
What's the legal limit again?
0.08.
0.08. That's crazy.
So this obviously changes between like your tolerance and stuff, but and then you get to excitement where you're now legally intoxicated. So it's like 0.08 to 0.25. So this level of intoxication affects the occipital lobe, temporal lobe, and frontal lobe in your brain. So drinking too much can cause side effects specific to each lobe's role, which includes blurred vision, slurred speech and hearing, lack of control, respectively. So, each region of the brain controls a different thing, and it's hitting them all at once, basically, where all of a sudden you can't really talk as well, you can't remember things as well, and you can't move as well, which is not a great combo.
Right.
The next stage is confusion. That's pretty self-explanatory. Stupor and coma. Like, I don't think I need to go through those because it's just like really bad. But those are kind of the stages. Hello, everyone. This is Editing Abby here. During our recording, I had my notes prepared and I had this website pulled up that talked about all of the more nitty-gritty kind of chemical reactions and neurotransmitter interactions and things like that happen when you drink alcohol, all of the more technical chemistry that's happening in your brain. Well, halfway through the recording, the site crashed. I couldn't pull it up. So I skipped that part, but I did want to kind of just interject here and go through some of them because it's very, very interesting. So let's talk about some of the actual brain chemistry really quick. So we talked about the dopamine release a little bit, but dopamine is known as the feel-good neurotransmitter, and it's involved in feeling pleasure. So when you drink alcohol at first, the dopamine release is thought to be one of the mechanisms that drive, you wanting to drink. It also is thought to drive addiction because people are chasing the dopamine hit. It's basically just the neurotransmitter that makes you feel good. Now, in addition to dopamine, drinking alcohol also releases serotonin, which is another happy and calm neurotransmitter. Now, we talked about a slower brain response. The actual kind of mechanism behind that is it increases the effects of GABA, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. So by increasing the effects of GABA, the responses in the brain are decreased. So that is what helps contribute to the slurred speech. So, we talked about the parts of the brain that were involved in slurred speech and slowing down and lack of coordination, but for the slurred speech, the effects of the GABA inhibitory neurotransmitter is what actually causes that slurred speech. It says our limbic system is involved in emotional responses, which is also slowed by alcohol, resulting in a loss of inhibition when you get drunk. So, a lot of people do not the smartest things when they're drunk, and that is because of this GABA neurotransmitter. Lack of coordination it says you may notice an inebriated person stumbling, having difficulty walking straight, because the part of your brain that controls coordination, which is the cerebellum, is very sensitive to alcohol. So again, this causes the falling over, but also passing out or sleepiness is another side effect that is caused by the cerebellum. Increased urination and dehydration is another symptom once you drink alcohol. So alcohol blocks vasopressin, which is a hormone that prevents our kidneys from eliminating too much fluid. So it suppresses that, or it blocks it. So your kidneys have really no gate check basically on how much fluid it is eliminating. And so that's what causes increased urination, and then that leads to dehydration. Okay, so then a hangover, which we talk a little bit about, is basically it happens during and after the overconsumption of alcohol, which we know, but the actual mechanism is really not clear. It's thought to be a result of that kind of first step of metabolizing the alcohol, acetaldehyde. You also have major changes in electrolytes, dehydration, low blood sugar, because of all of these different symptoms combined. If you're urinating more, you're not probably drinking enough water, your electrolytes might be all thrown off, your blood sugar, if you're drinking a ton of drinks with a lot of sugar and then your blood sugar ends up crashing, it's a lot of different mechanisms that are happening, but so they haven't pinpointed one mechanism that causes a hangover. But it's when, you drink too much for your liver or your kidneys and your liver to be able to filter out the alcohol. Now, prolonged use of alcohol is toxic to your neurons and can result in neuron death. So continued use of alcohol can cause the atrophy of the cerebellum and a shrinkage of the brain kind of as a whole. This results in ataxia, which is a degenerative disease of the nervous system. It's irreversible, and so really the overconsumption of alcohol on a prolonged basis is really, really bad for your brain. It also impacts the hippocampus, which is where memory formation happens. So overuse of alcohol can result in permanent memory impairment. You can also lose sensation of your hands and feet, which is known as neuropathy. So really there's not a lot of good stuff happening with the brains, but outside of your brain, alcohol can also permanently damage the liver. Obviously, we have talked about the liver is what filters out the alcohol out of your body, and it does it about 1 unit of alcohol per hour. So if you're overloading that system all the time, you're going to damage your liver, and alcohol can permanently damage the liver and result in liver cirrhosis. So this prevents the body from clearing out toxins in your everyday life if you've damaged your liver. The liver also produces clotting factors, which is responsible for, if you cut yourself or something, it is responsible for the clotting so you won't continue to bleed. With a damaged liver, the clotting factors in your blood are decreased, and so you have a major bleeding risk. Now, it's also kind of interesting, this talks about if you do have a dependency on alcohol, obviously it's important to seek help, but abrupt withdrawal from alcohol can cause seizures. There's also something called the Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, which can occur in patients with prolonged alcohol use, and it's actually a result of a vitamin B1 deficiency. So what happens during this syndrome is you have confusion, abnormal eye movements, changes in vision, loss of coordination. There's also a psychosis element that can be, if it's left untreated, you can kind of enter a psychosis, and it can be fatal. So a lot of times, obviously we'll talk about health benefits a little bit later in this episode, but definitely heavy alcohol use or prolonged alcohol use is not good for many reasons. But those are kind of the more technical neurotransmitter, talk about what alcohol does to your brain. So let's get back to the conversation with Sam, and we'll talk a little bit about the history of alcohol. Okay, so let's talk
really fascinating
about a brief history of alcohol. Basically, it started about 10,000 years, or alcohol manufacturing started in an organized fashion about 10,000 years ago when a fermented drink was produced from honey and wild yeast. By 6,000 BC,
honey.
grapevines, yeah, I guess because the sugar, that's like the sugar that the yeast is feasting on, which is interesting. I
wonder what that tastes like.
Well, isn't that mead kind of, or is that
Maybe
different?
I don't know. I might have to look that up.
Yeah,
I honestly, so the fermentation process, I don't quite understand how that works. Like what it means.
I think it's like
is it yeast?
Yeah, it is yeast, and they basically it's a living organism that eats the sugar, and their byproduct is carbon dioxide.
Interesting.
Yeah, so very similar to sourdough bread starter.
That's
you get
true.
the yeast from the air. I just fed my starter today, so but yeah, so the
That's
yeast
wild.
feasts on the sugars. So, and that is their byproduct. Okay, by 6,000 BC, grapevines were being cultivated in the mountains between the Black and Caspian Seas to make wine. In another 2,000 years in Mesopotamia, there was a thriving winemaking enterprise. So there's a lot of history. I'll link the full history, but for the last 10,000 years, it's been, they think people discovered it a long, long time ago. Like some people say 100,000 years ago, they discovered that fruit left in the bottom of a barrel for a long time could produce something that made you feel really good. Or it's also used for medicinal benefits a lot of times in history. Like wine was used, our wine is today, but wine was used instead of drinking water for a lot of times if the drinking water was bad. So it's been around for a very long time. I'll post the detailed history, but kind of interesting that for 10,000 years it's been a known process that's done in an orderly fashion for that long. And then like I mentioned, there was a time in America where it was illegal. It didn't go so well with prohibition. So, but here's the little mini history in America. So colonists in 1770 drank an average of 3.5 gallons of alcohol a year, which is actually double the modern rate. They were drinking a lot. By 1830, that number had even doubled, and colonists over the age of 15 drank more than 7 gallons of alcohol a year. It says part of this consumption had to do with health, believe it or not, because of water purification. So beer and alcohol were safer to drink than water. But it says, just to put it in some context, by 1830, the average person was consuming just under 2 bottles of 80 proof liquor every week. So
that's insane. 80 proof.
Yeah.
A week.
So interesting because which is like whiskey. Isn't
that's crazy.
Whiskey 80 proof? Or no, am I getting it wrong? Yeah.
It can be.
So it says that drinking boom in the 1800s led to a lot of moral objections, and in 1919 prohibition was enacted in the US. Alcohol was made illegal, but obviously like prohibition era stuff, it like underground trade, alcohol wasn't going anywhere. It would just like gave rise to a lot of organized crime, speakeasies and stuff like that. And then prohibition, they say, was kind of a failure. It didn't get repealed until 1930, just after the Great Depression hit. So
Wow.
it lasted like over a decade, which is kind of wild. And then after World War II, alcohol started to rise in popularity again, and like medicine kind of developed, and we learned a lot about fetal alcohol syndrome, and drunk driving became a factor. So in 1984, the legal drinking age was raised from 18 to 21. And that is like brings us into our modern time. Okay, and then one of the last things I wanted to talk about is any like risks versus benefits, because I feel like the, sober curious move is like really popular now. A lot of people are trying to not drink or like wanting more mocktails and stuff. And I feel like part of that is because a lot of people are realizing like how detrimental drinking can be, especially to your brain, like with these brain scans and stuff. But there was this talk, and there have been studies that like a glass of red wine with a piece of dark chocolate every day will extend your life and is good for you. But from what I can tell now, the research says basically that drinking alcohol in any amount carries a health risk, even if it's low for moderate intake and it goes up the amount you drink, even if it's still low, there's not like any health benefit to be found with any amount of drinking. Now,
Yeah.
so if health is your absolute number one priority, then maybe you have a case to like never drink. Some people like it for, social environments and things like that, and it's never like a problem. So it's just a risk reward sort of thing. But I feel like the narrative in the medical community, at least that I've seen during my research of this, kind of just says like there is no health benefit. Don't they
I could see
don't
that.
yeah, say that. But it is different, like there are different attitudes with drinking like by country. So like when you're pregnant in the US, they say zero alcohol, like do not touch it, don't don't have anything. In Europe, it's much more common for the guideline to be like a glass of wine with dinner, or like half a glass of wine, so it's a cultural thing, but basically doctors here are like, we don't trust you to do that. It's safer to not even play with it. So the standard guideline is just zero, but it is interesting that it varies from where you are in the world.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know
So
that.
that's that. But so your favorite drink is an old fashioned, is that right?
Yes. What's your favorite?
I like the bee's knees. That's always
Oh
good.
yeah, we posted that one. If you go back to,
Yes, we
we
did.
posted the recipe for Abby's husband makes a fantastic bee's knees, and he makes
Yeah.
his simple syrup from scratch too.
For like the boring, just like if like in college, I feel like I would just get a vodka cranberry because it keeps you
I still
hydrated.
do that. It
It's just
keeps you
easy. It
hydrated.
tastes good. It just kind of tastes like cranberry juice and whatever. But yeah, so that is the episode. That's alcohol. Do you have any other questions?
No, you nailed it.
Anything
I
that
didn't
I
know
missed?
that. No, that was a really interesting topic off the wall. I loved it.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad you liked it. I hope you all liked it who are watching. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this week's episode. Make sure to rate, subscribe, leave a review. We would really appreciate a review. That would be great. So make sure to do that, and we will see you next week for another episode. Bye, everyone.
Bye.